Welcome to another episode of Backyard Anything. We're back on the Dune Buggy today. I was listening to the radio the other day and they were talking about a car show that's a free entry one. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but I went and looked it up and it was like 2 weeks away and just no time to get it ready. But it got me interested. Is there a car show in the near future that I could actually get the Dune Buggy ready before it actually get it to go to? And there is. On October 29th, there's something called the Taylor Main Street Car Show. Last year they had over 600 entries. It's open to all makes and models. And I think the Dune Buggy would be awesome to take to that. It's about 2 hours away from where we live, so we got a lot of work to do. First off, obviously we got to get it running. And if it doesn't run, what's the point? We got to make sure it stops, so work on all the brakes again. I think I just forgot to adjust some stuff. Throw in some adjustments and good to go. We also need paints. Like y'all have seen it. It hasn't been painted in 40 years or longer, so definitely needs paints. Throw in a little tire shine too, maybe. I don't know. I would love to do some front suspension work. Replace shocks. Replace all the steering components. Get that all cleaned up, all greased up. I don't think it'll make it this round, but the shifter is really sloppy. There's something in there that has to be replaced. It does drive, it's fully functional, but you know, it's sloppy. Really clean that up. It seems like a good idea. And I need to redo the back seat, and I don't know, might do some work on the front seats as well. I would also like to be able to remove this hitch completely. I think it'll be simple. Be able to remove this bolt here and then slide in a thing with like a winch pin to hold that off. And it would be cool to have the winch up and working again. Be able to have a bracket or something or basically a handle to mount onto here. But you know, I'm not really sure how well that'll work. But again, first step is get it to turn on. So that's what we're going to start working on today. My brother lives here. This is at my parents' place. I live about 45 minutes down the road, so I don't get to work on it very often. They came in and they replaced the fuel filter. It's not super old, but it was starting to crack out a little bit, and as y'all saw in the last video, it was having trouble driving, so got a new one of those. The fuel pump leaks a teeny tiny little bit, so he bought a replacement fuel pump. We're not sure if it's going to work. This exact fuel pump is very, very hard to come by. So my father and brother were assuming maybe it's drawing in a little bit of air from there. I don't think so, because you see no sign of that in here. Ooh, unless you do. There's some little bubbles that just came up from there. That could have been it. I don't know. And then that's about it. Last time we were working on it, we killed the battery. I do have a jumper pack. I want to make sure that the battery cables are tightened on there. I think he pulled them off or loosened them up in order to charge it up, but he forgot to do that. So we're going to set that up to jump to a jumper box, and I want to play with turning it over and just see what happens. They did say they dumped fuel directly out of the fuel line straight into the carburetor, and it ran just fine as long as it had that. So we're back to it's not getting fuel for some reason, so maybe the accelerator's pump. It is a really cheap carburetor on there, so it could be needing a carburetor change. I hope not. That one wasn't the cheapest thing in the world, but I'm gonna pull out the off the air filter, spray some carbon choke cleaner in there, you know, basically like starter fluid, and then see what happens. Alright, so the battery's back on. I got a battery booster pack on it because I think the battery's dead. I'm going to spray some starter fluid in it. As y'all saw, I mean, it's got a new fuel filter in there, so the fuel's been drained out of the fuel line. And then hopefully it'll be able to start up, kick over, and then if it goes strongly enough, we'll be able to take it for a spin around the corner and really test out the brakes and stuff. Alright, that should be plenty. Alright, so I couldn't get the battery pack to work, so I just went and stole my brother's CRV and plugged that into it, a pair of jumper cables, jeez. And now let's see if it will start. I'm going to spray a little bit more carb cleaner in there, see if we can get it to fire up real fast, and then see how it sounds. This should work a lot better, and hopefully a lot faster. Here goes nothing. So far, not good. Alright, so far the fuel filter still hasn't filled all the way back up. I'm gonna try and run it a few more times off the carb cleaner, and then if it's still about the same, I'm gonna go assume fuel pump. I'm gonna try and just pull off the diaphragm off of this one and see if maybe the diaphragm in this mechanical fuel pump is just shot. It's entirely possible, if not probable. As far as I know, the pump in this thing is still original, so that makes all the components about 60 plus years old. So it could be that the fuel pump just is shot just due to age. It's kind of starting off of that carbon choke cleaner, but not very consistently, and it really doesn't look like it's taking any fuel, unfortunately. I want to get away without replacing that fuel pump, but I don't think I'm going to have much of a choice. You can hear it popping and like somewhat starting off. It's just, yeah, it's just not doing anything. That's unfortunate. Oh, but it could be vapor locked. I don't find that to be likely. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put y'all on a tripod. I'm gonna pull off the fuel line to the carburetor and run that into a mason jar I have up there, and we'll see if it's actually pushing anything at all. It's entirely possible it's not pushing anything. So, time for that, I guess. Alright, now in full disclosure, I did run this thing out of fuel the other day, so running it dry isn't good for it. It's entirely possible that I destroyed the diaphragm in the process. I mean, we have to hope not, of course, but it is possible. I really don't want to change out this fuel pump. The one we got is an aftermarket one. That was fuel that came out of there, so that's not good. Or is good, depending on how you look at that. What happens if I just do this? That's a near continuous stream of fuel coming out of there. Now it is much preferred if you have 2 people for this, but I don't. So, work with what you got. And unfortunately, that's the best I got. Alright. Ran that for a few seconds. That's a decent amount of fuel that came out of there. It's not the most amazing ever, but it honestly ain't bad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loop it on top of the carburetor. That way it's not going through the bowl, and just kind of see what happens that way. And the answer is I'm shooting gas everywhere. So it is sending it. I guess it's getting stuck in the bowl. I'm going to shoot some carb cleaner down into the bowl. If I can get it all the way in there. And just kind of see what I can get in. Most of that shot back out, but some of it hopefully made it in there. Alright, that's seated back on. A little bit of go-go juice inside. And let's give her another crank over. Alright, to be really, I have no idea what's happening. I think the answer is to pull off the fuel pump. And at least see how bad that diaphragm is. It really isn't filling up that fuel filter very much. So, fuel pump makes sense. It's basically the best guess I got, unfortunately. So, I guess you'll get to join me in a fuel pump. Hopefully that worked. Alright, so new fuel pump and filter, and the pump honestly doesn't really look the same. It's close. It's just not the same. Hopefully everything lines up. We're gonna find out. If it doesn't, I might cry just a little bit because I don't know what to do really. This pump, as I've probably already said, is over 60 years old, or most likely over 60 years old. I'm sure it's never been changed, so there's a half decent chance the diaphragm just really is shot, and it did already have a leak. So it's just, it's definitely getting fuel from the fuel tank. So it's definitely not completely dead. not going to be fun to change out. So it's basically 2 bolts, one on either side. The front one's going to be easy enough. The back one's going to be a little bit more challenging because of where it's located relative to the distributor here. We'll remove one and the other. Luckily we have a new gasket and everything. Look at that. First wrench, 13mm. And on the back side is the second one. Whew. Oh, that ain't gonna work. I might can get a socket on there, but I ain't gonna be able to get a regular wrench on. I'll pop this distributor, hopefully give me a little more room to work with. Hello. The distributor is broken. I have never seen that before. I wonder if that's the problem. Freaking rotor was broken. Alright, I'm going to put this nut back on and try her again. That would be the craziest fix ever. If this works, I am going to get a new one to make sure it stays good. But that's crazy. That's crazy, right? Now, I did notice when I pulled that off that this connection that goes directly on the gas tank is swollen, very swollen and very soft. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that off and wedge it back on there. It may be that it was just sucking air when it really shouldn't have, because air and fuel is important for the engine to run. Air in place of fuel, however, is very, very bad. So, sharp blade on a utility knife, cut that off, wedge it back on there, and good to go. And for anybody wondering, yes, the CRV is still running. I figure might as well charge up the battery while I'm here. Honestly, that connection on the boat motor ain't the tightest either. I don't know how I would tighten that though. I don't know if I can unscrew that or not. We may be trying that in a minute too. Ooh, it backfired. It's like it wants to run. Hey. Okay, so it was running. It sounded like it was just out of fuel. The fuel filter is still basically empty. So maybe back where I'm starting, except for it does have the entire line to fill. So I'm gonna put you on a tripod and let y'all listen. And if you don't mind, keep an eye on this fuel filter for me and tell me if it ever improves. She was running, obviously, but she never did fill the fuel filter, and she clearly can't idle. So the question is that a fuel pump issue or what? I honestly don't know. I'm gonna have to look that up. It could be that the carburetor just really needs to be adjusted, but the fuel filter not filling up confuses me. I can definitely adjust the idler screws and everything within the carburetor, but oh, that idler screw is all the way down. I want that to be a little in existence. I want a little bit of idle in there. So this idler screw was all the way down, which means an adjustment needs to be made here so that this can impact that better. So basically that needs to be there, and then tighten up this screw here so that this screw actually impacts something the way it needs to and holds pressure. And then that really is just empty. So is it not feeding any fuel at all? But how was I accelerating? I don't understand what just happened. But there's no fuel in that filter. So what's it running off of? So, basically just a hint more. Well, why is that not filling up? That's what I want to know. Oh, that's a fuel leak. I'm going to tighten up the fuel leak back here. That fuel leak's fixed, and she's actually idling. My guess is she was sucking in air from up here through the tank because of how loose that was. We really need to get a clamp on that, make sure it doesn't slip off like that again. But we have an idle, a consistent, calm idle, not a crazy, ridiculous one. Once she gets up to temp, we should start breathing out of both exhaust pipes. I'm not sure if she's supposed to breathe out of one until she gets warmed up or not, but that's essentially how it's worked since we got her running in the first place. But we're gonna let her idle for a minute, keep an eye on all that, and then on to brakes. What we're gonna do is we're gonna pull off the wheel salt we pulled off last week, and we're gonna tighten up the main spacer. I don't remember what it's actually called, but basically there's a little, not really a screw, but kind of, that forces spacing out on the brake shoes themselves. And by forcing the pressure out, when you push the brake pedal, it doesn't take as much pedal to fully enact the shoes. So we're thinking we're losing a little bit of pressure there because the lines seem to be good, they're bleeding fine, It's just, there's not much there. So we're thinking that's going to be the issue. So we're going to pull those off, tighten that up, and then move on to the next step as that gets brakes working. Alright, so I don't bore you making you watch this in real time. I went ahead and accelerated it for you. If you remember from the first video, it's lug bolts instead of lug nuts, so that's more complicated. But it's real simple. Just remove the wheel, remove the spacer, remove the castle nut, and the cotter pin. I also say during this strip that we're planning on painting the wheels black, but the drums themselves are going to be painted red, the same color as the buggy itself once we get it painted. This is an oil slinger here. It's a lot easier to do this without this on there. So, or to straighten this out first. So, take your pliers. Oh, bend it back straight. Because then it's easier to fit through the hole. Alright, now, here's little adjustments down here. I think you use a flathead screwdriver. On newer vehicles, this is definitely easier, but this clearly isn't a newer vehicle. So you want to just turn it. And then what it will do is it will force this pad out. And the other way, and other side the other direction. And try and slide it on. So, I try to slide it on, but it's not budging. Don't force it. Just pull it off and loosen it back just a little bit. Alright, so you basically just go back and forth over and over again until you get it to the exact spacing you need. And then on, and beautiful. Just a little resistance and good to go. And it'll turn just a nip, but it's actually kind of delicate to turn.
And then you have to take it back off.
And now that we know it fits, wiggle it back off and put on the oil slinger. Woo! So you want to come back off? There it goes.
That entire brake pad just moved.
Good. Alright. So, oil slinger back on. Drum back on. Hopefully. With the oil slinger going through. And that's why you straightened it up, because that was a lot easier to do. And then you unfold the oil slinger. Alright, now putting it back on is the same as it was in the last video, or the exact opposite of what we did today. Put your caster nut back on, tighten it up, loosen it just a little bit, put your cotter pin back in, tighten it back up, and then realign everything and bolt on the wheel. If you have any tips and tricks on how to put those wheel bolts in, or lug bolts in, and get them lined up easier, I would love to know them, because this is a nuisance every time. So it'd be a great help if you have any tips. Just leave it down in the comments. I would love to hear them. And voila, that's one done. I'm gonna do that to the other three. I will not bore y'all. It should go exactly the same way. If I run into anything interesting, I'll let y'all know though. I'll be back in a sec. Alright, sorry if there's any quality loss or audio loss. I've had to swap over to my phone. My camera's still very new to me, but it's a used camera, so the battery did not last long enough, unfortunately. I'll probably get a new battery for it, or just had to start charging it better. But she runs, as you saw and heard. It's weird. She apparently is running on fumes, because there's virtually no fuel in that fuel filter. And the brakes work. They're still a little looser than I like, but they're better than nothing. I may need to like bleed out and re-bleed the master cylinder, or maybe I just need to replace every line in here. I'm not really sure. I don't know if there will be a video next week. My sister's getting married, so I may be just doing that all weekend long, or maybe I'll manage to get out here and do a little bit more work on it. Like I said, we still need to do the back seat, still need to throw some paint on it and get it cleaned up. And I would love to get some more suspension there. I want to take some measurements and stuff before I leave here today. Maybe replace this steering rod and a few other things, really get the front suspension cleared up, because there is a little wobble at high speeds. Hopefully we can make it to the car show, but I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for joining us.